Hello and welcome to the Today's Homeowner Weekly Podcast. We're here to help you with the challenges we all face as homeowners. I'm Danny Lifford.
And I'm Joe Truini. And each week, Danny and I are here on the podcast to answer any and all home improvement questions.
And we want to hear from you. Send us your questions or comments at todayshomeowner.com/podcast.
Okay, Danny, let's get started.
Today's Homeowner Podcast is brought to you by the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
It's not just Santa who's coming to town, it's also your in-laws and their cousins. So time for some gifts from the Home Depot. From doorbell cameras to intelligent thermostats, you'll look smart and save big on the latest smart home gifts. Does your father-in-law like to fix things around the house? Put him to work with a DeWalt 20-volt 2-battery starter kit. Buy one, get one free. That should keep him busy. No matter who comes to town this year, make the holidays yours with savings on tools and gifts store-wide from the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
This week we share with you some great bathroom remodeling tips, especially what should you put on the walls of a well-used bathroom. We'll give you some great tips on that. Also, we have a little problem with grass sneaking up through asphalt. Not sure how it does that, but we'll tell you what to do if you're having that problem at your house. Also, some unfortunate problems with PEX plumbing we have to talk about. Speaking of problems, is the Instapot causing problems with a peeling ceiling? We'll have to see on that. What about that simple solution, Joe?
All right, Danny, I've got a quick tip on how to restore rusty tools to near like-new condition.
All right, let's get going here. Right now, we're going to go right to the Today's Homeowner Hotline and see if we can help Brenda in Kentucky. Brenda, welcome to the show.
Hey there. Thank you for inviting me, and I enjoy your shows. Been watching you for years, so I appreciate your help.
Oh, well, good. Well, we want to help you with this bathroom. I hear you're about to tear into a bathroom. Tell us all about it.
Well, it was upgraded, I think, in '98, and I made the mistake of putting, I think it's called masonite. It's like a sheeting on the walls. It was kind of popular back then. Mm-hmm. And, of course, it doesn't stand up to water behind my sink. I have like a pedestal sink. Mm-hmm. So thinking about replacing that and the floors, so forth. My commode is new, the tub's pretty new, and the tile around it. So basically, I'm concerned about the walls, a product. I'm not sure what the sheetrock will look like after we remove the masonite off the wall.
Well, Brenda, do you remember when it was installed? Did you use any glue or construction adhesive on it, or did you just nail it to the drywall?
Well, it probably has glue. I hired it done, and of course, I wasn't here when he put it up, but I would say it has glue, and then it's, pieced together with trim around the sides. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that would be the main thing is, and that'll tell you everything as soon as you remove that first section of it. Because if it's just simply nailed, most likely you can save that drywall and be able to use it. You may have 100 little nail holes to patch, but that's not that hard. But if you have the glue on it, that might be a different story. Sometimes the glue will turn loose fairly easily, but other times it's going to kind of damage the drywall by removing the surface paper off of it. That then will have to kind of a decision at that point whether to use joint compound to try to repair that damage or remove all of the drywall and replace it or veneer over it. Those will be the different options that you will have. Now, of course, the advantage, if you do end up removing all of it, take advantage of that and go ahead and insulate all of those walls. Even if it's an inside wall, that helps a lot on that noise transmission and just to keep the bathroom a little more cozy. And then just use a moisture-resistant drywall to go on it, have it finished, and then use an eggshell or semi-gloss paint to make it a little more durable and a little more washable. But it's all going to come down to you'll know what you have ahead of you when you remove just that first section.
Okay, well, that's great advice. I appreciate it. I thought about shiplap. I'm afraid that'll go out of style by the time I get it up, whatever. So I wasn't sure if there's anything else I could put over the sheetrock if I decided to go that route.
Well, a lot of people use the beadboard, which looks okay if you use it on a wainscoting type of approach, but putting it all over the wall, I'm not sure about that. Joe, what would you recommend? Because there's still, drywall and painting it with semi-gloss paint or eggshell is pretty common. Of course, the product that we used at Chelsea's house, wet wall, is I was really impressed with that. What are the thoughts you have, Joe?
Yeah, Brenda, I was thinking the same thing. What I thought you could do a beadboard wainscoting up like just half the wall,
Right.
which would have chair rail on top. So now you only have half the wall that you have to be concerned with. Because I suspect, as Danny I think does as well, when you pull off this masonite, you're going to find those walls are in pretty rough shape. And rather than just patching or replacing all the old sheetrock, I would just go over it with 1/4-inch sheetrock. And again, you're only going to be doing a little more than half of the wall because you'll have the beadboard down below it. And the beadboard comes in, you can get vinyl, or I guess it's PVC, almost plastic beadboard, or you get the wooden one and paint it or stain it. And then once you put up the new drywall, then of course, you can just finish it and paint it as if you would any other room. Now, some people think, well, I could put up wallpaper and that would solve the problem. And that would, except wallpaper in a bathroom when it's exposed to a lot of hot, steamy air. I'm not so sure about that, Brenda. Sometimes it starts to peel off and then you're back to another problem. So I think I'd probably avoid the wallpaper, but I like the idea of wainscoting and then there's new drywall above.
Now, one more question. Will the beadboard be safe behind that pedestal sink? Because that's where I had a problem with the masonite. It started peeling off there.
Yes. If you paint it really well, or if you get the PVC, the plastic kind, of course, then it'll be completely impervious to any water damage.
Okay. Great idea. I appreciate that.
Of course. Thank you.
Well, there you go, Brenda. A few different ideas to consider, and certainly hope the bathroom turns out well. And we appreciate you watching our television show.
Well, I sure enjoy it. Thank you guys for your advice. Y'all have a great day.
Okay, let's get right to today's Homeowner Hotline. We're going to check in with Greg in North Carolina. Greg, welcome to the show, and tell us what's going on with this asphalt driveway.
Yes, thank you. I have grass that's eating into the edges of my driveway, and I'm hoping to get any suggestions on how to get it to stop and how I might be able to prevent it from occurring again in the future.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? How with because when you put down a lot of asphalt and, it's usually about 1 inch to 1.5 inches thick, how in the world could anything grow up through that? But it just like concrete, you're going to have a little crack here and there, and then water gets down in there, and that's about all it takes. Well, we have several different ways of approaching this, and one is to simply put boiling water on it. You can just pour, take the old tea kettle and heat it up and go out and pour that boiling water directly on the plant, and it'll be gone by the afternoon. And then you can just take a screwdriver or something, a garden tool to scrape it out of there, and then that will eliminate it. But now, of course, on any of the different methods, and Joe has another idea of a homemade solution that you can spray on it. But once you get this done, though, Greg, you're going to want to use some concrete repair, or not concrete repair, but asphalt repair caulk. And you can put it in a caulking tube and just go into each and every one of these cracks and just fill it up. That'll prevent the water from getting down in there and the plants growing behind that. Joe, you want to share your homemade solution that a lot of people asked us about there about a year ago?
Yeah, Greg, I had shared a simple solution for a weed killer that works great. And it's basically just white vinegar with dish soap. That's the most simple solution. And the dish soap just helps the vinegar stick to it. And you can use regular white vinegar that you might put like in a salad dressing or something, but they also make a home and garden vinegar, which has a much higher acidic rating to it, content to it, so it works a lot faster. And what I've seen people use around here, and Danny, I think you've mentioned this before, that there are propane torches, Greg, made specifically for killing weeds, and I think they're called like flame weeders, and I've seen them called weed torch kit. But essentially, it's a long handle with a little blower on the end, and then there's a 20-gallon propane tank that's on wheels, and you just roll around and you just torch it. And that's the reason that the boiling water works too. By the way, that idea of Danny's works great, except if the water cools off, Greg, don't use it, because then you're just watering the weeds.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're going to grow really well. But going back to the original problem, like how do you stop it? Well, that might be an ongoing problem. But once you kill them, as Danny said, if you can put some kind of asphalt repair a patch in there, that'll help. But there's a very important step of laying an asphalt driveway that's almost always skipped, because that the contractors want to get in and out. After the final excavation and grading of the driveway, the exposed soil is supposed to be treated with I think they call it a pre-emergent weed killer that also kills the seeds. If they put that down first, prior to laying the asphalt, then there's a lot less chance of the weeds growing through. And then as far as how do you stop that? Well, one thing is I've seen people put in borders. Now, it might be easier just to kill them when you see them, but if you have the weeds just growing through the border of your driveway, what they can do is cut away the border, cut away the edges and put in a solid border. Usually it's like, I think they call them Belgian block. Around here, they call them landscaping blocks, or you can just use concrete, pour concrete, basically like a curb. And that just creates a barrier so the grass doesn't get to the driveway. But again, that would be a last resort, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I think I'll give that white vinegar with the dish soap a try as a first step, and then dig them all out of there.
And sometimes if you add, if it's really, since this is just grass, that'll probably work. But if you add Epsom salt to it as well, that really will kill them. But just try the vinegar, even just household vinegar, and a little Dawn dish soap or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I have all of those ingredients here already.
Good.
Great. There you go. You don't even have to go to the store to make that situation work. And you'll probably want to do it before it gets really, really cold. But I'm glad we were able to help you on that. You can tackle that grass and keep that asphalt looking good. And then maybe in the spring, you might consider putting another coating over it just to kind of maintain it and keep it looking good. But Greg, we appreciate you being a part of today's Homeowner Radio Show today.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Time for our Best New Product segment, brought to you by the Home Depot, how doers get more done. Now, if you've ever tried to finish a really dense wood like teak or mahogany, you know it really takes a lot of work. Master woodworkers often spend hours and hours creating hand-rub finishes on this kind of wood. But now you have a much easier option. Waco Teak Oil Plus Stain is specifically formulated for the dense type woods, and it applies very easily by brushing, wiping, or spraying. Then it penetrates deep into the wood pores to create the rich, warm glow of a hand rub finish. Now, it dries to the touch in just 8 hours, and the water-resistant formula withstands a wide range of climate conditions. Its UV protection helps keep your exterior wood projects looking great, and it cleans up very simply with mineral spirits. So for more information on this Watco Teak Oil Plus Stain, log on to HomeDepot.com. Joe, they just keep doing things more and more to help you a little bit easier, because I know that that's amazing when you think about porous natures of wood.
Right.
And, let's say you have, I love working with cedar, even though that's very, very porous and a little more lightweight. You put that side by side with a piece of teak or mahogany or oak, boy, you can tell the differences in woods very, very quickly.
Yeah, just by picking it up, right? But I've been using Watco for many, many years. I don't even know, since I can remember. It used to be a separate company, and their first product was Watco Danish Oil. And then they were bought by Minwax. Now I think they're owned by Rust-Oleum or something. But yeah, the problem with teak or mahogany, not only is it really super dense, so it doesn't absorb as much, but those woods typically have a high oil content, and that also prevents oil-based stains or finishes from soaking in. And I've not used the one with the stain because this is new, but I've used a teak oil before on some teak outdoor furniture, and it does work great. The nice thing about an oil hand rub finish like that, unlike a polyurethane, if this fades, you just light sanding and you put more right on top. You don't have to sand off some hard finish that's on top of the wood.
You can ask us a question, you can comment on something you would like Joe and I to talk about, or if you have one of those special tips that might even become a simple solution, send it to us as well. Again, you can call us or you can send us an email on that. And we get a lot of calls on the hotline, and we want to grab a few of those right now. This first one is from Sean.
Yes, I'm calling about a plumbing issue. I have a finished basement, and about 13 years ago, we put in PEX plumbing with the crimp rings. And we have well water in the area. This may be contributing to this, but the crimp rings and the 90-degree elbows and such are made out of some type of, bronze type of metal. Anyway, they're corroding, and what it's doing, I guess it's weakening the rings, and I'm getting drips, they're showing up in the ceiling. It's the third one I've had, and I'm worried that now there's been 3 in the last 2 years, that every single one of these is going to become an issue. So that's my problem. Like I said, it's finished. So before I get in there and start cutting everything back, maybe you could give me a little information or wisdom regarding this issue. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, wow. I sure hate to hear that. I was hoping that was an unfinished basement.
Right.
And, where you have that accessibility, because that's the number one problem there is, having, especially if it's overhead, because, of course, you have a floor space above you. And that means whatever's there, drywall or whatever, is going to have to be removed. Now, possibly he has a suspended ceiling there, which
That's what I was thinking. That would make it a lot easier.
A lot of people in basements do. If that's the case, then you certainly want to go ahead and replace it. Now, Joe, a little bit of corrosion on that. And, we've talked about this many, many times over the years. And you have a lot of different opinions there. I hear a lot of plumbers and professionals talk about the real problem with the PEX. And what was the previous name for that?
For PEX?
Yeah.
Well, it's cross-linked polyethylene is what PEX stands for, right?
But originally the fittings and the crimping was actually plastic, and they had a lot of failure in that. So they went to the metallic or the copper type crimp fittings, and that supposedly eliminated it. And I have it in my house. I have it in my previous house, and I never had any problem with it whatsoever. But of course, you also have the quality of workmanship issue. You never know if they're doing it exactly the way they're supposed to do it. But I wonder what we should advise Sean on this, because if he's having active, I think he said 3 leaks, more is on the way. It's not going to fix itself.
Yeah, well, there's the old saying, a chain is only strong as its weakest link, and that's the concern with PEX. Is the PEX piping ordinarily isn't the issue. It's the fittings. Now, the great thing about those systems is there are very few fittings, but it's not that there aren't any fittings. And if he has a couple that are just corroding, as you mentioned, that's not really an issue. But if they're leaking, he has to replace them, first of all. That's obvious. And this is a 13-year-old system. The first systems, they all used to be hand crimped, meaning there's a tool kind of look like a big pair of pliers, and you just hand crimp them. And those didn't work as well as the ones they have now, which are either electric or battery powered, and they're set up to adjust and to apply just the right amount of pressure, because too much pressure, obviously, you'd crush it, and too little pressure, it'll leak. So they probably didn't use those types of crimping tools on this system. But any ones he can get to, any fittings he can get to, he can replace. Any that are in line, meaning it's a straight vertical piece of PEX that for some reason has a joint in the middle of it, which it shouldn't, but if it does, that wouldn't be an issue because water's not sitting in it. It's any ones, like you mentioned, the elbows where water often will sit. But he's going to have to replace them. But what do you do with the ones inside the walls upstairs? You're going to tear the whole house apart. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not sure what to tell Sean yet, other than replacing the ones he can get to, then just wait it out and hope for the best.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, it's amazing. If you get a plumber that is, let's say, one that does a lot of renovations and a lot of rerouting existing water lines. It's pretty amazing how they can, and it's just like a good electrician that can navigate wires and plumbing pipes where you would never even think about, that may minimize the amount of plumbing that or amount of drywall that you have to remove. And it's going to be inevitable that either the suspended ceiling portions of it or portions of the drywall ceiling will have to be removed to access it. But they can kind of figure out that anatomy of the plumbing and route that pretty well. So I would really check with the local plumbing supplier and say, hey, who do you know that really does a lot of remodeling plumbing? And that would be someone to get out, take a look at it, and maybe they can find some very simple ways of maybe bypassing the existing lines and preventing that issue there. Sean, we hate that you're having that kind of problem, and hopefully the solution is fairly easy. I want to go over an email we received here from Stephanie from Georgia. Says, the pine trees around our house keeps our gutters constantly full and clogged. I've seen all kinds of gutter covers and inserts for sale, but I really don't know which, if any of them work well. Plus, some of them are really expensive to experiment with. Can you help? Well, Stephanie, not the first time we've had a homeowner reach out to us about all the different gutter guards that are available, and gutter shields and helmets and all kinds of different ways of, keeping it out. And I think, some of them work a little better in some areas of the country where it has, maybe less rainfall versus others that have a lot of rainfall. But it can be a confusing issue because there's so many products and so many claims out there. I'd be kind of weary of anything that claims to be zero maintenance, because gutters will certainly need some attentions over the years. So honestly, that's why I really like Gutter Brush. That's That's what I use in my house. And it's a simple gutter guard that, they're very honest about the fact that there will be some maintenance, but they keep the gutters flowing and simplify that little maintenance that needs to be done. Gutter brush is basically a round brush that sits inside the gutters to keep debris out while allowing the water to filter through it. Now, in your case with pine needles, gutter brush will keep your gutters flowing, and it can be easily maintained by, whenever necessary, by just pulling the brushes out, shaking them clear, sliding them right back in. And there's no tools or fasteners or anything that you have to disconnect, and you'll find it much better than scooping that wet pine straw out of dozens of feet of gutters. And gutter brush really won't cost you a lot of money. They estimate the cost to protect an average home at around $200 to $300. So to find out more, all you got to do is go to gutterbrush.com, or I'll tell you what, this is a situation where you can pick up the phone and call them and talk all about it and order whatever you want. And the phone number to reach out to Gutter Brush is 888-397-9433. That's 888-397-9433. So that works fairly well. And,
And Danny, for anyone who says $200 to $300 sounds expensive, go and price some of the other ones.
Oh, yeah.
And see, it's probably 4 times that for the average size house.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And if you can keep yourself from getting on that ladder and having to do a lot of that maintenance, it's $200 or $300. It gets real reasonable really quick.
Sure does, yeah.
Right now, we're going to go to Kevin in Portland, Michigan. Kevin, welcome to the Today's Homeowner Radio Show, and tell us what's going on with this plaster ceiling.
Hi. Yeah, so we had a plaster ceiling in our kitchen. It was painted with a oil-based paint. And recently, I'd say within the last year and a half to 2 years, my parents purchased one of the Instant Pots, and they often use it on the counter. And we noticed, like I said, after about 2 years, the paint started peeling off the ceiling in a spot that kind of fits where the steam would go from the Instant Pot. So we're kind of curious if that's probably the issue, and maybe what can we do in the future to prevent that besides getting rid of the Instant Pot.
Well, we can't do that. We don't want to get rid of that. That's a great question, and I was thinking of the same thing. Where I've got to check where my Instapot is and see, how that's affecting things, because a lot of times that'll be very, very close to cabinetry that you might not notice any deterioration initially, but before you know it, there could be. So that's something to think about. Joe, what do you think? Painting a plaster ceiling and having paint on a plaster ceiling many times is very good because it's a porous material. It'll really get into the pores of that ceiling. It'll hold up very, very well. And like Kevin said, it's been painted and doing good for 40 years. What do you think? You think it could be the Instapot?
Yeah, Kevin, the fact that it's only happening in that one spot directly above the Instant Pot seems to indicate that's the issue. I mean, I'd hate to tell you to move it to another spot and see if you can peel the paint off some other part of your kitchen. Maybe for Christmas, give your neighbor an Instant Pot and then call him about a month later and see how his ceiling's doing. But yeah, I mean, it certainly sounds like it. I mean, the only thing I would do is, move it, patch the ceiling, and next time you use your Instapot, if the stove isn't being used, maybe if you can set it up on the range and put on the range hood and suck that moisture out, or I don't know what else you could do with it, because if it's going to be the same distance from the ceiling, which is surprising, because even if your ceiling's only 8 foot, a little less than 8 foot, and the countertop's 3 foot, that's still 5 feet away. How much steam is this thing producing? You'd think that couldn't be the issue, but I'm not sure what else it could be if it's only happening since you got the Instant Pot, and it's only happening directly above the Instant Pot. So I would say either move it or use it someplace, or don't use it at all for a while and see. But you definitely have to patch the ceiling, right? So if the ceiling's peeling paint, what do? You have to sand it all off, try to feather out the sanding so that it's smooth where it's meeting the paint that's not peeling, prime it all really well. I would suggest using restoration primer, which is a little more expensive, but it really does seal much better than ordinary primer. And then, paint it. Now, I would just paint that one spot, but that might be noticeable and you might end up having to paint the whole ceiling, but I wouldn't start with that. I'd start with paint that one spot and hopefully it'll blend in.
But that's not a bad idea, is to take a cutting board or a large cookie sheet and position that right there, and that way you can use the vent hood that you have, hopefully you have in the kitchen, and even though it might be a little more inconvenient, that's That might be a good way to go, Kevin. Kevin, are you still with us?
We stunned him into silence with our knowledge.
I think he's in the kitchen now, checking out what we just said. And
he passed out. We gave him too much information.
Be a little uncomfortable to position the Instapot on the floor.
Right. Yeah. When you said use a sheet pan or a cookie, I thought you meant nail the cookie sheet to the ceiling, because that would work too. That would keep that steam.
No, we don't want to do that.
No, but yeah, of course, if you put it on the range, you can use the range hood, but then you can't use the range.
Yeah,
because the Instapot sitting on it. That is pretty curious. I'm not really sure. Sorry, Kevin, we lost you somewhere along the way there.
That's very unusual that happens, but hopefully we were able to give you some good information on that, and happy to help you any other way. And we want to get right to something here that I wanted to tell you all about. It's called Spreadstone Mineral Select Countertop Finishing Kit. One of the great things about the job that we do here is we get to help a lot of homeowners improve their homes. And kitchen projects are always among the most popular ones that we take on. But one of the biggest challenges we face in the kitchen is usually the countertops, because changing countertops is pretty invasive and messy, not to mention very expensive. In a recent kitchen episode, we tried something different. Instead of replacing the homeowner's laminate countertops that were those things were like 40 years old, we coated them with Spreadstone Mineral Select Countertop Finishing Kit from Deitch Coatings. Now, these kits are great because you simply kind of scuff up the existing countertop with a little sandpaper, then you clean it, and you roll on a primer coat followed by 2 coats of the stone coating. Now, this is what makes Spreadstone so special. Unlike other counter coating options, this material actually includes real stone in the formula. So after you lightly sand the stone coating, it reveals the shimmering mineral accents and color highlights that you would find in a naturally mined rock. It's just amazing when we did this. Everybody loved doing this, and actually Chelsea and the homeowner, Amy, did all of the work, and only took them just a little while. I just can't believe how what a transformation it was. Now, the process is finished with a clear sealer to protect and highlight the countertop surface. The results are really impressive, and the cost is a fraction of replacing those countertops. Plus, it really only takes a matter of hours, not weeks. So to find out more about Spreadstone Mineral Select Countertop Finishing Kits, check them all out at DeitchCoatings.com, and that's DAICH Coatings.com. And if you missed the episode where we use the product, you can see it. You can see all the results by going here. We'll show you exactly how you can get to that episode. Today'sHomeowner.com/1021. Today'sHomeowner.com/1021, so that you can see the entire transformation there. That worked out pretty well. And again, that's a lot cheaper than putting in a stone countertop, which these days, if you can get the materials, cost thousands of dollars.
Right.
There's no better person to talk about all the fun that you can have in renovating, improving, and maintaining your home than my buddy Joe Truini, who I've known for well over 20 years. And he never ceases to amaze me with the simple solutions and what he can come up with. And, he's done it, there's probably like 550 of these on the website right now. So, Joe, I'm sitting back. Give us another one.
All right, Danny. There are 2 things I often use in simple solutions. What 2 things do we mention all the time?
Definitely white vinegar. I skipped over the gallon jug. Now I have 5 gallons, so I'm ready.
Good
Whatever
for
you
you.
need.
Good for you. Well, simple solutions, we're often talking about vinegar in pool noodles. And in this simple solution, is how to restore rusty tools. So take a guess which one I'm using. Okay, and I'll give you a hint. It's not pool noodles. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're going with the vinegar. Okay, I got my 5-gallon ready. Here we go.
You can try beating the tools with pool noodles, but I don't think that's going to get the rust up. So if you have some hand tools that are badly rusted, and certainly don't toss them out, because you can usually restore them. And I mentioned some of the oldest tools are the best tools, because just the way they were made. So you want to restore them if you can. So what you do is get a plastic bin big enough to hold the tools, the rusted tools, set the tools in there, and just pour white vinegar over them. You want them completely submerged, obviously. So sometimes you have to use almost a whole half a gallon or more, depending on how many tools you have. But just set them in there, submerge them in white vinegar, and let them sit at least 2 days. Even if they're lightly rusted, I'd wait 2 days. And after soaking, if you look in, you don't even have to touch them. You'll see that the vinegar will be colored with just remnants of rust that have just dissolving right off, because there's enough acid in the vinegar to loosen up some of that corrosion. And then after 2 days or so, take them out and take a wire brush and just scrub off the remaining rust. You'll be surprised you get right down to the bare metal. Then, of course, you want to dry them really well, otherwise they're going to start rusting again. So dry them really well and spray them with any kind of like a silicone lubricant, just a light spray of oil, just to lubricate them up a little bit and prevent them from rusting immediately. And if you do that once every several years, even if you keep your tools in a very wet, humid environment, that would probably be plenty. But you'd be surprised on some tools that you think you'd need to toss out, you could save.
And boy, just think about how little time that can take and how much better that is when you grab that tool for the next little project that you're doing and it's ready to go. It's clean and free of rust and free of all of the gook that gets on it. And then, of course, if you're spraying it with a silicone, then it's going to work right because, you get one of the, you get a tool and it, so another great one. And you can find out and view a lot more of the simple solutions by going to todayshomeowner.com Simple Solution.
It's not just Santa who's coming to town, it's also your in-laws and their cousins. So time for some gifts from the Home Depot. From doorbell cameras to intelligent thermostats, you'll look smart and save big on the latest smart home gifts. Does your father-in-law like to fix things around the house? Put him to work with a DeWalt 20-volt 2-battery starter kit. Buy one, get one free. That should keep him busy. No matter who comes to town this year, make the holidays yours with savings on tools and gifts store-wide from the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
Now it's time for our podcast question of the week. We'd love to get a question from you. You can send us one at todayshomeowner.com/podcast. Bobby Sue in South Dakota wrote in and said, the builder of my home nailed the drywall to the studs using a pattern of 2 nails spaced about 2 inches apart. The nail heads are popping in many of the different locations. Now, I heard Joe's simple solution on how to fix this problem with dealing with only one pop nail. He said to drive screws above and below the pop nail head, then yank out the nail and patch the repair. But what's the best way to repair 2 pop nail heads that are only 2 inches apart? Joe, apparently, I would guess, whether it's 1 nail or 2 nails, they missed the stud or something. A lot of times you can get just a little bit of the wood stud and still have that nail pop with the different expansion and contraction. What do you recommend to Bobby Sue?
Yeah, well, in this case, Bobby Sue, it's basically the same repair, only I would probably recommend 3 nails. 3 screws. Never replace a nail with a nail. Always put in a screw with a drywall screw. And so what I would do is I'd go, about an inch above one of the nails, then drive in another screw in between the 2 nails, which are 2 inches apart, and then go 1 inch below the lower nail, right? So you're basically just driving in 3 screws. And then pop out those screws, those nails that pull them out completely. Sometimes I recommend driving them in, but then you don't know, as Danny said, if they're not going right into solid wood, they might back themselves out again. So it's better off just at this point, you have to patch the wall anyway, just yank them out. And the only other thing I'd suggest is when you drive in that screw, make sure you're hitting the middle of that stud. So you might have to drive the screw in a couple of times or drive in a little finishing nail, try to find where the edge of the stud is. And then once you find one edge, just move over 3/4 of an inch and you'll be in the center. Because if you just drive in, some people pull out a nail and they drive in a screw in the same place, but you don't know if that's going in, might be just missing the stud or just hitting the edge of the stud. And so even the screw would pop out at that point. So that's what I would suggest. Put in 3 screws and then pull out those nails.
Well, it's always better if you have those screws in there instead of nails. A lot of times, the pros will use nails just to hang the drywall enough so that they can break out the screws. That always seems to be a much better drywall, project and finish over the years. So I always encourage anybody, and if you're doing it yourself, go ahead and use screws. It really doesn't take that much longer. And we really appreciate that question. Again, if you want to send us a question, you can do so by going to todayshomeowner.com/podcast. We really appreciate you spending some time with us. Hey, there's a lot of podcasts out there and a lot of things that can occupy your time. So for you to spend some time downloading and listening to the Today's Homeowner podcast, Joe and I really, really appreciate it. And we certainly appreciate all the great reviews we've been getting, and the numbers keep growing and growing. And for that, we really appreciate it. I'm Danny Lifford, along with my buddy Joe Truini. Thanks so much for listening to this Today's Homeowner podcast.